So this is the exact thumbnail system I've used to generate 500 million views for clients. And no, that's not just a flashy number that I randomly made up for a Twitter thread. I actually ran through and calculated all the videos I've helped work. I mean, not all of them because there's dozens, right? But like the biggest ones that I've helped work on, and the total surpasses 500 billion. I've actually worked with dozens of channels and helped them get millions and millions of views. Quick one right here. I got hired to help work with Rebound. I ran their thumbnails and helped them with ideas for about a year. Helped with a lot of these thumbnails, helped design, tweak, optimize, come up with the idea for a lot of these thumbnails. I mean, these videos have millions upon millions of views. Recently been working with Hafu here, where I mean, he just pulls millions and millions of views, helping up with his thumbnails, optimize, give feedback on the thumbnails, help with ideas. The team's been working with Nick DiGiovanni, helping specifically with thumbnails. Now with Nick, a lot of this was back catalog switching. So we take old videos and just come up with a new idea for it and then A/B test. The team came up with this specific thumbnail idea and it helped the video get even more millions of views. So you get the picture. We've worked with a lot of YouTubers and really extensively focused a lot on thumbnails and helped YouTubers generate millions of views with thumbnails. So I want to quickly run through my thumbnail process for how I come up with thumbnails for these massive clients and how I come up with thumbnails for myself. So I created this thread a little while back. I'll link it in the description. I'm going to quickly go over it, but this is the core thing. I'm going to go over it, kind of talk about my thoughts, and then expand on some of these. Because with Twitter, a lot of the times, you have a word limit, so you can't really give your full thoughts on like why you do things, the details of X, Y, Z. So this is where I'm going to do that. So basically, the first step of the thumbnail process is obviously finding the idea, right? So you have a title or you have a topic direction that you are like looking towards, right? So it's like, okay, I'm going to make, surviving 24 hours in the woods in Russia. The topic is this. This is a banger topic. I will need a thumbnail for this. So the first step is obviously coming up with the idea. Now I have two methods for this. So the first method is the outlier method. So I'm going to cover this method first because it is the more well-known method. And this is just looking at data to generate ideas. So there's this principle or the strategy called outlier theory, where you look at videos that have performed well in the past as a way to figure out what the audience clicks on, what the audience enjoys, what the audience likes, and using that to guarantee clicks. And so this is done with topics, finding a topic that's worked well and recreating that topic. This is done with thumbnails, where you find a thumbnail that was a massive outlier that like really helped explode like maybe an average topic, and you take that thumbnail outlier and you use it and you tweak on it. So this is this sort of thing. So this is the method. It's you're using the data of stuff that has done well in the past and using that to find ideas. And so a lot of the times you find a thumbnail and you're like, oh, okay, this is a banger, and you want to repurpose it. So this is a huge mistake I see a lot of YouTubers make, and this is like Beast kind of did this a little bit, where, oh wow, massive outlier, 160 million views 2 years ago, and he just comes in and just basically rips it, right? Let's be honest. Basically rips it, throws him in there. And so this specific thing, I'll tell you why I actually think this is a good thing, what he did, and why it's not a bad thing. So, and why sometimes it can be a bad thing. So basically with Beast, he takes this format from a niche that's not in his, from a format that's not his. So on YouTube, there's tons of different formats. There's faceless content. There's, reaction. So it's just, imagine just a clip playing. There's no one talking. There's no personality. It's just a clips. There's clips, like the clips that made blah, blah, blah famous. It's just it's a clip compilations. There is, educational content. There's informational content. There's personality content. There's group content. So what you can do is you can take an outlier from a certain type of content and you can bring it into your niche and really not change much. Just the fact that you're innovating in terms of the medium, the way you're creating that content is good enough to make your content fresh and feel different. So this is exactly what Beast does here. No one has done this in real life. No one has done an IRL version of this. So he takes this concept that's just game. It's not even, there's no personality, there's no talking, it's just showing a clip in a video game, and he makes it in real life with voiceover, with points, with a structure, with personalities, with a budget, and that is the sort of novelty. So he doesn't really need to go crazy on innovating on the thumbnail or innovating on the idea, because the core idea has never been seen in his space. So that is an example of an outlier done properly and converting that to a good thumbnail, right? Now, a mistake that I see a lot of YouTubers making, especially like YouTubers like that are working with other strategists or YouTubers who are just on the optimization wave trying to optimize and just come up with good ideas for their channel, is they look at outliers in their space. So for example, they'll find an outlier of another YouTuber in their space who's like just a talking educational head YouTuber, and they'll take that outlier and just copy the exact thumbnail and title and then upload it on their channel. And so you see the difference there with MrBeast taking a different medium and innovating. He's the first one to take this idea, this sort of just train versus falling into a massive pit idea, and then bring it into and just make it in real life, right? And then you have the other guy who sees the outlier on a competing channel and he just rips it. And so the content isn't really different besides like your unique experience and, you know, whatever you're saying. The content is identical. It's informational content on the exact same topic. So that is something you need to be careful of, is not ripping straight and kind of not ripping straight from your niche. So let's go through a very specific example to really cement this of like how you can use data to find thumbnail ideas. So imagine we have the topic, what if Superman fought the Avengers? So it's an interesting topic where you take a character from one universe, from one like, you know, Star Wars character versus like a different universe versus Marvel. They're different universes, right? Superman, DC Comics, different universe, you put them against like the powerful characters from another super popular universe, right? It's like, what would happen, right? And so it's like, okay, what do we do? Well, first, you want to look on YouTube, be like, what has worked well on YouTube? Has anything in this space worked well? Has any of these ideas worked well? Has any sort of thumbnail format worked really well? And so if you do a couple keyword research, I like to, on YouTube, I just do slight keywords. So just do like Superman versus, you can do a cool hack on YouTube is you can actually go and use this, I don't know what this is called, but it's you do Shift 8 in the search bar, and it's this little comma thing right here. And this basically tells YouTube, this YouTube search engine, find any title that has a format. So we can do this versus, and then we do another this. And so it basically tells YouTube, find any video where it's a random word and then a versus and then another random word. So you click enter and it's just going to find, yes, random titles where you don't have to search in like these specific keywords. It'll just find that format of random word versus and then another random word. And it'll find all the videos where that is the case, right? Where there's this versus case. So this is really useful for finding, you know, outliers and just finding, you know, stuff that pops. So yeah, little hack there. So basically, you search up these keywords, you look for inspiration, you look for what's done well, and when doing this for the Superman one, what you find is you find these videos right here. You find this Dragon Ball Z versus Marvel superheroes. It's a parody battle. So this is like a rap battle, music rap battle, and then you find another one, parody battle, of, you know, two superhero characters fighting, sort of mid-action of almost throwing his fist, you know. But the cool thing here, this is the same as the MrBeast. No one has done a talking video on this, like a video essay on this, where you go through the case by case of like, what would happen? What's scenario one? What's scenario two? Someone talking, B-roll footage. No one's done this. This is just a 3-minute like music parody video. So, okay, boom. We know, okay, we're already innovating on the content. We're doing fresh content in a fresh medium that no one's done before. On top of that, we know that this has worked really well. There's this data with this like 99 million views, 56 million views, massive data. This has worked super well, right? And so, boom, we know this is an interesting direction. Okay, but where can we, you know, find a good thumbnail for, you know? So if we continue searching, we find, so if you continue searching, you find this idea on the left. So it's like, okay, we have this sort of Dragon Ball, you know, you just do Dragon Ball keyword, you're just looking for inspiration, and you find this sort of action of character punching through another character. Now, right there, I've been on YouTube for a while, and seeing that action of like punching through a character, it's like, holy shit, that is crazy. Like that visual is insane of like punching right through the chest of another character, especially in like some like a cartoon universe. That's definitely feasible. Like if we did this in real life and you had like MrBeast punching through a character, it's like, no, that's bullshit. It's clickbait. It's not gonna happen, right? But in like a cartoon universe, who are you to say that that's not going to happen? Of course that could happen. You know, that could happen in any universe. You could show that on a show. So it's super believable. It's a really interesting action. It's like, okay, what if we take that and we have Superman punching through Iron Man right in the middle of the chest, you know? And we have the Superman sort of reaction to the mid-action of Superman's fist going through Iron Man. Boom. Outlier thumbnail, outlier topic, never done before. So that's a way to create a novel idea right there. So we have really good packaging, you know, really good idea. So that's method one, right? Is using data. Okay, method two is something that I really like to focus on more nowadays, because I feel like a lot of people use that outlier strategy, where a lot of YouTubers nowadays, you'll see this sort of saturation where they just find random outliers in their niche and just copy it blatantly, the ideas. And I don't know if YouTubers, I mean, they do it on purpose to a certain extent. They don't know any better, I don't think. But they don't know any better, where they just like, people are like, oh, outlier theory, so they just copy and paste. You know, it's about using it properly, not just seeing an outlier and copy pasting it, right? So this method is kind of to avoid that cycle of like running into everyone doing the same thing as you. And the goal is to be more creative with generating ideas. And so for me, what I like to do is I call it like staring at the wall ideation. And you just like, you really just close your eyes, or you just stare at the wall, blank wall, nothing in front of you, and you sort of brainstorm key visuals, right? So for like Superman versus Avengers, so you close your eyes and the reason you want no distractions, right? So you're brainstorming, okay, what are some big things? So you have Superman, he's invincible, and you kind of ramble on about like what are some key attributes, you know? Superman, invincible, like super strength, he's got laser eyes. What if we had like laser eyes going through someone, you know? What if we had Superman frozen? What if we had Iron Man Infinity Stone gauntlet killing Superman going into dust? Like you start to kind of, you see, I'm just randomly thinking of ideas based off of like what's viral, what's done but well before, what are some really iconic actions with different characters or different topics. And so you're kind of just brainstorming what are some creative things I can do that have never been done but are like played off, that are trendy, are known, are interesting, have worked, and you really try and brainstorm what is a creative way of doing something interesting that no one's done before. Let's go through an example because this is going to be very good for really cementing this method. So we have this topic, cannibal, the cannibal who became a famous food critic. So this is a sort of video essay about a story of a cannibal who became known for being a food critic, which is a crazy title. You have this guy who eats humans who now he's become super popular, famous in the world for reviewing restaurants. Like that's crazy, right? So here you close your eyes, you kind of brainstorm. What are your first thoughts? You're like, okay, we have weird dude, cannibal, really weird dude eating food. You know, eating food in front of audience. You know, he's a cannibal, so maybe we show him eating something weird. You know, maybe we show him eating a hand, eating a brain. You know, how is he eating it? You know, he's a famous. Oh, we have famous food critics, so maybe we have like paparazzi in the background. You know, you see how I'm kind of just like close your eyes and you're brainstorming. What are some interesting angles that kind of work around the sort of title? And then boom, from there you can come up with an idea where you have this sort of, you know, food critic, weird looking guy. He's a cannibal, so he's like a weird, you can tell he's messed up in the head, so we want to visually show him being like messed up. So weird looking face, you know, we have paparazzi in the background, he's famous, you know, in a restaurant, fancy restaurant, you know, golden plate, you know, then we have something weird on the plate, maybe a brain, a hand, you know, something like that, you know, to really visualize this concept, right? And then boom, we have a good idea. And so these are the two methods I typically come for coming up with ideas. Now, there are a couple other factors that comes to coming up with a good idea that massive YouTubers use. And I'm going to run through these really quickly. So we have the intrigue factor. So I notice this a lot, especially with smaller creators starting out, and even sometimes bigger creators like Eric, for example. If I pull up Eric here, like Eric, for example, that he's missing an intrigue factor. So there's a really simple visual for this visual right here. I ate the most pizza in 24 hours. We have this visual of Iraq surrounded by a bunch of slices, right? And it's like, what is the intrigue factor there? What is like the crazy visual we're trying to show that's like, holy shit, like, you know, $1 million of cash piled together, or, you know, world's biggest pizza on the inside of a massive building, or, you know, action of punching through someone's chest. Like, what's the crazy intrigue visual we're showing? And it's like, we're just showing a bunch of pizza around a dude's head. It's like, it's not really interesting. It's not visually interesting. And so that's the mistake I notice a lot is people will brainstorm like, ooh, these aesthetic, cool background and, you know, very interesting, like sexy, these sort of sexy thumbnails, but they're not efficient. They're not playing into the psychology of like, this is an interesting visual that that makes people curious and that they want to click on to like see, you know? So that's the big thing is the sort of the intrigue aspect, the clickbait or like the curiosity gap. And so there's a lot of ways to do this, right? So a lot of times you have this sort of intrigue visual can be a contrast. So like right here, look, we have this crazy contrast between like barren desert and then like flush with green with plant vegetation life. Like that contrast, that is the intrigue factors, that crazy contrast. You know, you can think of this in like, you can go in any direction with this. You can show like, you know, basketball court all destroyed and then $10,000 basketball court, golden court, you know, expensive, whatever, you know, show this contrast, you know. We can show extreme. This is extremely popular, extremely popular with IRL YouTubers, especially like Mr. Beast, for example, is going the most extreme scenario or the least extreme scenario. So like it's a spectrum. So you can go like the worst case scenario or the best case scenario extreme, right? And you go this extreme direction. So for like, you know, we have 20 most ridiculous moments or 20 craziest moments in the NBA of all time, you know? And it's like, oh, we do this crazy moment of the Jumbotron falling to the ground, you know, denting, breaking the court. You have the player reactions of like, oh my gosh, what's happening? You know, running away. Some people like baffled, you know? And so really playing into like, what is the intrigue factor that's getting people to click? And really making sure our thumbnails have that and it's not just like a sexy designed thumbnail in Photoshop. Now, another thing is simplicity, you know, how simple is the thumbnail? And I don't mean simplicity in terms of like the intrigue needs to be simple. I mean more in terms of like the design needs to be simple. So there's this really crazy thumbnail I saw recently from Diary of CEO. And I think this is a perfect example for what not to do or what happens when you overdo something. So we have right here, we have this thumbnail right here. Let me see if I can grab it. I'm going to grab the URL and make it bigger. Give me a sec.
What if you never had to?
Okay. So we have this thumbnail right here, okay, from Diary of a CEO. Massive podcast. This video got like 2 million views, I think. So it did really well, right? Let's see. It got exactly 2 million views. Wow. Spot on. Anyways. So it got 2 million views. So it did well for his channel, right? But look at the thumbnail. Think of the simplicity. It's like, is this a simple thumbnail? No, we have 2 people. We have a intrigue element. Actually, I say their main attempt for the intrigue element was this dollar bill in different colors, right? You have symbols coming off of the intrigue element. You have, what is this? 8 words of text with numbers and even this corner logo, logo trademark, whatever it's called, right? It's like, this is a very overcomplicated thumbnail, but you can see how they got to this point, right? Diary of CEOs, they're not idiots when it comes to YouTube. Their principle is like, okay, we need to make viewers curious. What if we have a ton of elements and we just stack in one thumbnail like dozens of elements to get as many like intrigue factors in the thumbnail as possible? And you can see how this sort of train of thinking goes wrong because you're just overdoing it. As a viewer, you look at this and you're like, if you have no clue who Stephen Bartlett is and you have no clue who this guest is, right? Like, where do you start? You're just like, like it's very overwhelming. Like, there's too much to look at. It's way too busy. So a big thing is being simple. It's like, okay, do we focus on mainly the text, or do we remove the text and the symbols and we show a dollar bill being cut in half and cracked up and separated, and with different colors to visualize the different separations, and then maybe 2 to 3 words of text emphasizing what they're trying to show visually, one face versus 2, removing the trademark because you already have the face of Stephen Bartlett, which is really associated with the podcast already, so you don't need this logo, right? So very big on simplicity. You want your thumbnails to be simple, and the reasoning behind this is because the more complex your thumbnail is, the harder it is to understand, the harder it is to break it down, and viewers just don't care or don't have the time. And I'm not saying it doesn't work. You will get clicks, right? But it's not as efficient as a more simple thumbnail where viewers can see it and understand it instantly, right? When you look at this thumbnail right here of this transformation, you can instantly understand. Like, you instantly see, oh wow, desert, green, like desert, thriving vegetation, desert, thriving vegetation. Instantly, you see that, right? You see the contrast. Instantly, you're like, how did they do that? Hooked, right? Versus you look at this thumbnail and you're like, what are they trying to get across here? This thumbnail, the only thing that comes to me is like, oh, I know this YouTuber. Oh, I know this podcast host. I'm going to click because I like both of them. So, but what happens if you don't know them? Then you're screwed. So you need to be very careful in the simplicity. Another thing here is the believability. This is huge. And this is the one thing I see YouTubers messed up most often is how believable a thumbnail is. And you need to be very careful with AI nowadays because AI can make crazy, crazy scenarios that are so unbelievable that people don't believe it. And if people don't believe, people think it's clickbait, they're not going to click, right? So my friend Jude made this chart, and I think it's a great chart to really visualize this. Is you have clickability on one side and you have unbelievability on the other, right? So a really good thumbnail has a mix of both, right? Where it's both unbelievable to a certain extent, or like crazy to a certain extent, but it is believable, right? So it has that craziness to it, but it's also like, oh, I could see that happening. Like, a great example is this Jumbotron, right? You could feasibly see, okay, I could see a scenario where a Jumbotron falls into the court and maybe I missed this clip, or maybe last night while I was sleeping, an NBA game was playing and this happened, right? And it's breaking news, right? And so you can feasibly be like, oh, maybe this did happen and I missed it, right? Now, if you have like a fucking alien on the court, right? It's like, come on, man. Like, that is not believable, right? So there is an extent to how believable you can get with things. And this chart kind of goes through that. And it's like, at a certain point, you hit like this sort of unbelievability where it's not believable anymore. So you keep going to the extreme. So you have like, okay, normal basketball, normal game of basketball, right? Guy injures himself, Jumbotron falls. Oh, that's pretty crazy. And then you have alien on the court. Okay, at that point, it's not believable anymore, and so the clickability goes down. So you have to be very careful in terms of where the idea is. You don't want it to be too boring. You don't want it to be too unbelievable or too clickbaity. You want to find that sort of range, that comfort zone of like, it's crazy, it's unbelievable, but it's not clickbait unbelievable, right? So that's a big thing to keep in mind. An example to really reaffirm this is Mr. Beast, right? If you look at these thumbnails, did these scenarios actually happen in his video? Like specifically, right? It's like, was there a golden statue of Mr. Beast? Was there this crazy like island, whatnot? Did it look like this? Was there a shot of this in the video? No, there wasn't. But it was close enough where it didn't matter, right? He was on an island. He did have a boat segment. He did have this sort of trap where it was like something was closing in on a contestant, right? But it wasn't like specifically this chainsaw, right? So you can get away with sort of crazy, showing these sort of crazy thumbnails that maybe even didn't even happen very specifically in the video. Confirm that content close enough, or if the thumbnail isn't too extreme to where it's believable, where it's like, okay, I could see Mr. Beast buying an island and then, you know, turning it into a Mr. Beast like Diddy Party Island, right? I could see Mr. Beast doing that. Like in a video, you could see Mr. Beast buying an island and throwing 100 contestants on it, and last one wins it, right? That's very easy a Mr. Beast video. And so when you see that, it makes sense. It's not too unbelievable. Now, the last thing is the design. This is the sexiness I was talking about. The sort of like good optimization on design really makes the thumbnails pop. So for example, we have this idea, this intrigue factor of Mr. Beast, snake on his neck, being choked out. Really interesting, right? Psychologically, really interesting. There's like primal fears there, you know. I think people fucking hate snakes on top of that. It's just a really crazy scenario too, right? It's a very base fear. So it's a really good idea. But if you look at the design, it doesn't pop, right? Before, when it's like a normal, like this is a normal snake color. Like a snakes will look like that in real life, right? But then you come in Photoshop, and this is where you do the sexiness, the optimization, the design, is you tweak the color to where it's not too unbelievable. You don't do like a neon green, right? Or like a crazy like orange, neon orange, right? But you do like a green to where it pops and it sticks out, and you can separate snake from beast, but then it's not too unbelievable. So that's the design aspect. And you know, you can do this like Photoshop, optimizing the Photoshop, all that. And then lastly, this is, oh, never mind, not lastly. And so that's the design. You really want to nail the design aspect, and you do this through multiple variations of the thumbnail in Photoshop, giving feedback, you know, tweaking things, changing colors. This is also where you can A/B test. You can A/B test the different colors, see what works best, right? Another thing that I find really, really useful, and that a lot of the big YouTubers do, is thumbnail sketches, right? So you visualize what the idea looks like before you spend a ton of time and a ton of money hiring people to actually make it. You know, spending the time getting the photo shoot, getting the right thumbnail image, you know, and then hiring a designer, which are very expensive nowadays, to make the thumbnail. You want to sketch it first. So a lot of bigger YouTubers are doing this, and I do this a lot with bigger clients where I sketch out the thumbnail. This is an example of a thumbnail sketch I did for a client, right? So we, you know, sketching out the face, it's very bare bones. We're just trying to get this sort of environment, the intrigue elements in there, and the sort of layout. So we can see, okay, how does this look? And then we can throw this in a tool where we have this concept sketch with the title and see, does this pop? Is this interesting? You know, does this work well? You know, and that's a really good way of just investing time to see, will this be a banger thumbnail without, you know, investing like hundreds of dollars. Now, the last thing that I see a lot of creators like mess up is not having really good thumbnail and title fit. Now, other people call it thumbnail and title cohesion. Basically, you're trying to make the thumbnail and title match really, really well. Now, a great example of this is that exact creator I just showed, Hafugo. He released a thumbnail recently that had really, really good thumbnail and title fit. And not all videos will have this good thumbnail and title fit, right? But this video right here, we have puzzles that look easy but are actually impossible, right? Puzzles that look easy but are actually impossible. So puzzles are like, you know, like Rubik's Cubes, these sort of things, right? And then here we show this kid's toy. We show, or what appears to be a kid's toy, but then it has multiple layers to it. So it has this sort of weird complexity to it. It has this, it's a kid's toy in terms of it's plastic, it's got the bright kids colors, but then it has multiple layers and it has this sort of weird complexity to it. And that's an example of really, really good thumbnail title fit. The title is talking about a puzzle that looks easy, but is really hard to solve. And here we are in the thumbnail, we are literally showing a kid's puzzle, like a kid's toy that looks easy, but has this weird complexity to it. You know, it's really hard. And that is an example of really good thumbnail title fit. You know, and I think a lot of thumbnails kind of don't really go in that direction a lot, where it's just they show the most crazy extreme version of something. Or the title is too broad. Like if you do like, for example, you do like, I visited world's worst cruise ship, right? That's not a very specific title, right? Like it's a specific scenario, but it's not a specific title where it's like, I visited the blah, blah, blah cruise ship where we did, you know? And so it's a lot harder to get that clickability because the title and sometimes the thumbnail are a bit more vague, a bit more broad, you know? And what I've actually found is that the more specific titles actually get higher CTR. So it's actually pretty crazy, but like when you do more specific, so for example, let's say we did like 20 craziest moments in NBA history, right? That's not really specific. It's more of a broad. It's like craziest moments, and then we show like a specific moment as a thumbnail, right? That's a broad thumbnail, so that can work well, right? But it's very hingent on the thumbnail, on like what scenario we show to really create that curiosity, right? Versus in the title, if we just did, there's no way the NBA allowed this. That's the title. There's no way the NBA allowed this, and then we show a specific thing in the thumbnail. Now all of a sudden, the curiosity, where's it coming from? Not specifically the crazy thumbnail example, but the titles. Like what specifically did the NBA like allow or mistakenly allow, or what specifically did the NBA do? And you see how now the title is creating that curiosity. So that's another thing to think of, is like the best thumbnails I think have a really good title and thumbnail fit, where the title is very specific, but not specific in the sense like it's niching. It makes your video too niche, but specific in like a curiosity example. And then you have the thumbnail that really well supports that, and then boom, that makes a really, really killer packaging that can do really well in terms of the click-through rate. In conclusion, thumbnails are super important. I like most YouTubers I talk to, most creators that want to work with me, most of their issues can be solved if they spend a bit more time on the thumbnail and title and go through these steps on their thumbnails and titles. Their videos and their channels typically grow crazy. So yeah, just something I wanted to share, my exact process, go more in depth on this thread that did well. Yeah, I hope you guys liked it. Hope it was useful. Peace.